Hello and welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today, our guest is the writer, Juliet Marillier, and my co-host and musical collaborator is Sophie Janna. Hello, Sophie.
Hello.
All the way from Haarlem.
Yes. Well, Holland. What did you say?
Haarlem?
No, I'm in Hilversum now.
Hilversum. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
But you could say Amsterdam as well. That's where I was for 20 years.
Yes, an Amsterdam singer-songwriter, folk singer.
Yep.
Yeah, so introduce yourself a little bit for the listeners.
Okay, I'm Sophie Janna. I play folk songs. I started out playing mostly traditional songs from Scotland and Ireland, but more and more I've started playing my own songs as well, but they're really inspired by folk songs. And yeah, that's what I do.
Great. And your guest today is a New Zealand writer who you've been a fan of for many years. Is that correct to say? Yeah.
Yes, I realized that I was 14 when her first book came out, and I read it straight that year because I used to read everything I saw, and I was in love with that book.
Which book was that?
I'm really, really excited to talk to her. It was called Daughter of the Forest, and it is inspired by a fairy tale that I knew that you might know, where a girl's brothers are turned into swans by an evil sorceress. And even though that sounds like something that would never happen in the novel, it's so real. And then this girl is supposed to help her brothers turn back into humans by a whole series of trials and a big journey, and it's just so relatable, and you would not expect that. I mean, you fully believe that the next day you walk out on the street, you'll see somebody with a swan arm, and that would be one of the brothers. Honestly.
Yeah, that really fits with your style as well, with the musical, this folklore.
Yes, and it could be that her book even set me on that path. I'm not sure. I was hooked by the myths and the storytelling and descriptions of nature, and it was just incredible. So to think that I will see the person who wrote all this is just.
And have you written any songs about it?
I wanted to, and also because in the books she writes, there are many songs, but you do, just the lyrics, and there's also great descriptions of music. So I've wanted to write songs with those lyrics, but I also felt a bit hesitant because I didn't know if there might actually be a song with those lyrics already. So that's something I'm really curious to ask. And
yeah. Well, that's a good way to go down. Yeah, it's half the job done already.
Yeah.
No, it'd be wonderful to collaborate with your idol like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be amazing. And but many of the words in her books already sound like a song. But I guess I usually read books when I want to escape from my life. So that's I guess why sometimes those books don't come back in my songwriting, because my songwriting is usually about my life, to be honest. And so I haven't dared to write about people's books yet. But who knows?
It's interesting, yeah. Yes. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, I love interviewing writers because I make notes during the interviews and they just come up with much more poetic words. So you make better notes, then for it makes a better song. Whereas when it's not a writer, you really have to do a lot more work afterwards to make it sound poetic. You don't have this great kickstart.
Yeah, and especially I guess with Juliet, because that's something that I didn't used to know. I only found that out because I'm going to see her later. But she used to study music, and she was a musician for the first part of her career. She only started writing when she was 50. So
50?
Yeah.
Really?
And that's also something I find so inspirational. Like, my favorite series on The Guardian, the newspaper, is about people who change their lives around when they are 60. And to us, sometimes it feels like when you're 60, you're at the end. And the things we do now, like we already feel like we've closed some paths, like some things we can never be anymore. Like, when you're little, everything is wide open, and now we've already closed some gaps. some paths that we can't take anymore. But those stories make me realize that you never close it. You know, you can always move. Like you moved to a different country, and you can also always start a completely new career. And yeah, those stories I love. And I had no idea that she started that late. And I'm really curious to hear also what kickstarted it and why she didn't start writing earlier.
Yeah. She seems to have touched many people with her writing. I haven't read the books. Never heard of her before, but it's researching on the internet and many YouTube testimonials and people really passionate about her writing and how she's on the other side of the world and she's now 75, but she's still touching all these. It seems to be young hearts around the world. So because are they romantic stories? I mean, how would you describe them? Yeah.
Yeah. All of them have a romantic love in the center, I suppose. Well, although maybe not in the center. Like it's more about the journey of a particular person, and usually a woman, young girl,
Okay.
who has to save her family or something and discover something about herself in the process. Like sometimes they feel like they're just common and they have other siblings who are better at things. You know, that's really related. I felt really seen by this. And I guess it's about growing up, discovering about yourself that you can do more than you think. I guess that's maybe why it appeals so much to maybe young adults, like teenagers. Yeah,
Maybe that's the timelessness of that story about the brother lady with the swans. That's for brothers. That people have to overcome their family and break free, and there's all these.
Yeah, and leave their home and sometimes see their homes in a completely different light.
Yeah.
I love all of them, and also the historical part of them. I guess maybe as somebody growing up in Europe, but I'm not sure if that's the main reason. But you grow up with all those old stories in old places, and especially like Celtic mythology that's so much older. And just speaks to your fantasy, I guess.
Oh, here's Juliet.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, nice to right?
Good afternoon for you.
Sorry?
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening to you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Got my audio on? Okay, good.
Well, this is Sophie.
How are the dogs today?
Hello, Sophie.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Not quite sure if I'm in the right headspace to do this. I've just been dealing with trying to walk my dogs in time to, put good clothes on and so forth. It's very hot here, so I can't walk them too early, but then it gets dark and so anyway, they're done and I'm slightly better dressed than I was for dog walking, so we hope that it goes well.
You look great.
Oh, well, we'll see.
Thank
We'll
you
see
so much for doing that. Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, thank you so much for trying to fit it all around the dogs.
That's all right. The dogs shouldn't take up quite so much of my time, but they do. Yeah, all being rather old and needy in their selves. Yeah.
How many books would you have written if you hadn't got the dogs?
Good question. I don't know. See, I've really just had multiple dogs since I became a writer, so it might not have made much difference. It's just been in recent years, and I have in the past had 5 at once. So the 3 I've got at the moment should actually be quite easy. But yeah, they're all elderly, and they've all got their own kind of little quirks which make life complicated. Yeah. It's good. They're good company. It means that I can talk to them. I talk to them about the books, and I think about book plots and so forth, as I do the walks. So I'm sure it all helps. Yeah.
Nice. So you used to be a musician like I am now, right?
Yes. Probably not, maybe not as much of a musician as you are now, but I certainly studied music at university, and I worked in the musical field, teaching in particular, and also conducting choirs and singing in choirs. So yeah, quite a few years of doing that until I made a few career changes along the way, and didn't really become a serious writer until quite late in life. So yeah, I mean, I always wrote even when I was little, but didn't start writing books for publication until quite late on here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I love how you can still change direction. When you're young, it doesn't feel like that. You feel like you have to choose a path and stay on it.
Yes,
And
that's right.
and I love that feeling that that's not true.
Yeah, no, it's not true. And
Yeah, and I never realized.
you've got to be sort of brave enough to make
Sorry?
the change, and I made a lot of changes in my life all at the same time. And from that, I went onto the path of writing fiction and was just very fortunate to be able to make a career of it. Yeah. So I like to tell the story because particularly women who have done all sorts of other things in their lives, perhaps having families and maybe taking on work that's mainly to support the family, and not being able to follow the dream, can sometimes pick it up in midlife. And, I'm an example of that, I guess.
Yeah, because you already raised your family at that point.
Well, what happened was
when you started to become a full-time.
First up, my marriage broke up, and that was my choice. And so at that stage, my younger two children were 10 and 14, so they were still at home. And there was that was quite a time of upheaval, even though it was, as I say, it was my choice to do that, but very disturbing for the whole family, I'm sure. And I was working full-time in an office job at that stage. And I started writing seriously again. I mean, I wrote a lot when I was very young, just for fun, because I was a bit of an emotional mess, and I wanted to write a story, and I just had that. It was part of sort of therapy to fix myself up, I guess, So I managed to write my first book when my son was still living at home and was in primary school, and my daughter was in high school. And that was written, first book took me 3 years to write, so it was very much part-time in between the work and family commitments. But eventually, and I wasn't writing thinking, I will be a writer and be published. I was just writing because I needed to get all the emotions out, which is why that first book is so full of feelings. And I was just very fortunate that someone suggested I send it into a publisher to be assessed, and there was a local publisher at that stage who had a policy of reading manuscripts from people who lived in Western Australia or were Western Australians, and I knew they didn't publish the sort of book I had written, but I sent it in anyway because they gave you an opinion. Got a very nice letter back from them saying, we really loved it, we think it's good, but we don't publish fantasy. Which wasn't any surprise. And they suggested 2 mainstream publishers that I might send it to. And so I looked up, I knew nothing about publishing at that stage. That was, 25 years ago, and I'd never tried. I didn't even really know what the fantasy genre was. Yes, I looked on the websites of those 2 publishers on my work computer because I didn't have one at home. And one of them accepted unsolicited submissions and the other one didn't. So it was sent into Pan Macmillan, the whole complete manuscript as the book and an outline of the 2 books to follow in the trilogy. And I was really lucky to score a 3-book contract on the basis of that. Just happened to be the right time when Pan Macmillan Australia wanted a new fantasy writer. I didn't know that. And so, they paid what felt like an astonishing sum, which now would seem like absolute peanuts compared with what authors get, but wow, it was just amazing because I hadn't really expected to go down that route. And so that's where it started. But it took me a few years of still working in the public service and making enough money to, keep the household going and school and everything, before I could actually give it up and say, right, I'm going to be a full-time writer. But really, I was very, very fortunate to do the right thing at the right time. Yeah.
Wow. That's astonishing. Well, I was thinking about that because I read in an interview that you wrote that story when you were going through a personal crisis. And,
yes.
I was a 14-year-old when I read it first. And,
yes.
and I felt so seen by that book and so comforted. And, all the things that I struggled with. You say like there's so many feelings in that book. But I think that's exactly what touched me. I grew up in a household where we were really doing things with feelings, and I had so many of them. And this main character, it was so relatable, and it's incredible because it's a 10th century Ireland woman in a fairy tale. So you wrote it more or less to comfort yourself.
Yes. Yes, just to put things down on the page, and possibly to, after being through a really very, a marriage that wasn't good for quite a few years, even though we had 4 children together and, had been together for a long, long time. It had been had not been working for quite a number of years. And I have a sneaky feeling that Red, who's the central male character in Daughter of the Forest, was my antithesis of my then partner. Let's hope he doesn't watch this. He had all the qualities that at that stage I really would have loved in a life partner, such as not just courage, but kindness and patience and care for other people, putting other people before himself, that sort of thing, So it's no wonder so many readers liked him so much. Yeah, and when people say, what's one of the best things about being an author, it's feedback from readers exactly like what you've just said to me. And I have quite a number of readers who, particularly with that series, but also with some of my later books like the Blackthorn Grim books, say that something in it has really touched them personally and helped them through a dark period in their own lives or a crisis in their own lives, or help them to understand themselves. And that to me is the absolute best sort of feedback, because I guess it tells me that I'm doing my job as a writer, not just entertaining people, although that too is good, but also giving them something meaningful, but in the form of as you said, a story that's got magic and the uncanny and history that's sometimes not quite accurate, sadly. But it's set in a world that is not really our world, but those characters experience crises and dramas and challenges that are really the same sorts of things that we face today in our lives. They've just got to dip the trappings of their own period here.
Yeah, and that's what I love about folk music as well, that all the main themes of the songs are struggles of humans just like us.
Yes.
And so I find them so comforting, like your stories. And that's what I love about playing folk music as well. And I that's also a thing that I loved in your books, the role of music in it. So yeah, I can't believe that I only discovered now, because we're doing this interview that you were a musician. That's no surprise, in fact.
Yes, it's hard not to let the music sort of sneak in. I mean, I think the fact that I'm a musician shows in my writing, not because I write about music, but because I think if you're a musician, particularly a folk musician like you, you've got certain rhythm patterns and rhythms in your mind that come and go. And if you write words, you use rhythms that are quite musical often. And I think particularly for me, if I'm writing stories that are about, have elements of mythology and the uncanny and so forth, I guess I maybe go into a mode that's a sort of almost a fairy tale storytelling mode that relates to musical rhythms. And so my work is often good to read aloud, and it's probably not surprising that they've done really well as audiobooks, because they've got that flow that is a bit musical in itself. But I consciously decided with the Warrior Bards series that I wanted to feature musicians as characters, which I hadn't really put them in as main characters before. And so in that story we have, a brother and sister who in their part-time go and, perform in a band for weddings and celebrations and so forth, and who are both very talented. And with Brock, it turns out that his talent comes from somewhere other than the obvious, just his sister's interest in playing music and so forth. So he's got what amounts to an uncanny sort of talent, despite being brought up in a fairly ordinary household. Yeah. And I loved the way, though, they were so good at making up tunes and lyrics, particularly Levon, has a talent for making up the lyrics very quickly, probably much more quickly than anyone really could, but hey, that's all right. That's her talent. And sings something that's appropriate to the occasion, even it might be sort of traditional sounding. So often the songs will contain some sort of meaning that is beyond the obvious, that's going to reflect what's going on in the world around her or her relationships with other people. So I like that. I don't really perform folk music properly the way you do. I am in a choir that sings a mixture of all sorts of things, including classical and some folk music and some popular music and so forth. But I love the sort of authentic folk sound very much. That's the kind I love listening to that style.
But I was going to ask your interest in those Irish and Scottish and Orkney mythologies. Do you think that comes from growing up in Dunedin? Did you grow up in Dunedin, or did you only study there?
I did grow up. I was born in Dunedin, grew up there, went to university there, and in fact met my partner at university, and we married there. So 2 of our children were born in New Zealand, and then we moved to Australia for his work purposes, and have lived in various parts of Australia after that. Yes, my ancestry is mostly Scottish with a little bit of Irish, and Dunedin, as you probably know, was settled by Scottish settlers. Obviously, the Maori were there before them. And sadly, at the time when I went to school, there wasn't a lot of Maori culture and history built into the school curriculum, and so I didn't quite realise quite how rich that storytelling tradition was until much later on. But certainly I grew up surrounded by particularly Scottish music and folk music. My mother was a music teacher. She taught piano, but she also accompanied singers, and so and she also reviewed concerts for the local newspaper, and so she got free tickets to a wide variety of concerts, usually 2 tickets, and I was the only other one in the family who was a musician, so I got to hear all sorts of wonderful performances, which the family would never have been able to afford to go if Mum hadn't been there as a concert reviewer. So that was really quite sort of instrumental in arousing my musical interest. And we had the local pipe band, and we had places where people would compete to sing, Scottish songs and so forth. So it was very much part of my upbringing. And when I finally went to Scotland, much later as an adult, it felt so much like going home. It was quite uncanny, even though we hadn't kept in touch with the Scottish branch of the family, but it just felt absolutely like being on home ground, especially in Orkney, which is interesting because there is one Orkney ancestor in the mix, and that is a place of such amazing, startling landscapes. Not really the place you'd expect a girl from New Zealand to love, because we have forest in New Zealand and trees and water. Orkney has almost no trees because it's so windy that nothing grows unless it's in a little walled garden, very sheltered, But it's a very beautiful landscape with so much wonderful history of, the people who were there before the Vikings. We think they sometimes call them proto-Pictish, sort of similar to Picts, but perhaps not Picts. And there are the Norse ruins as well. So it's no wonder then I wrote Wolfskin, which is my novel about imagining the first Norse invasion of the islands and what impact that might have had on the people that were living there before. Yes.
Yeah, that was so interesting. And I'm wondering actually whether your books made me... I studied in Edinburgh eventually, and I did Celtic literature there. And, that was a few years after reading Daughter of the Forest. And I only actually just discovered your stories about Orkney this summer. And I loved them all. And I found it so incredible. Yeah, because, in Daughter of the Forest, they're keepers of the land and trying to keep the traditions. And in your book about Orkney, the only person who remains from the old tradition decides to join
the
Vikings in a sense. It's just mind-blowing. I mean, I never thought of those kind of things, and it's such a, I don't even know how to express it. It's just, I would never expect. Yeah, it's so, well, I just don't know what to say. I'm sorry, I'm so fangirling.
Right. Yeah, I look back on writing that book. I did a lot of research for that book. I think because I hadn't written all 6 of the Sevenwaters related books then, but I had written the first 3, and I decided, I mean, a couple of people had pointed out flaws in the history of the Sevenwaters saga, which was because at that stage, I thought, oh, this book's full of magic. It's not going to matter if the history's not quite right. But there's always someone who will say, oh, you know, they didn't have pumpkins on that side of the ocean in those days, or whatever it is. So I thought, right, I better write something that's well historically researched. And so a huge amount of research went into preparing to write Wolfskin. But really what triggered it off was, I was reading a book called The Art of Viking Warfare, and they talked about the berserkers who in legend are meant to have sort of leapt off the front of the longship semi-naked and, you know, had this insane urge to fight and were answerable to the appropriate god and so forth. And somewhere I read that, I think that I went to look at some of the translations of the Icelandic sagas, which are the closest thing you can get to stories from the time. And here's this man who was a berserk fighter, and you learn that they only went raiding twice a year, in spring and autumn, because of the weather and the ocean currents and so forth. And so what did they do with the rest of the time? They didn't run around crazily half naked. They went home to the farm, helped mum to, you know, do whatever needed to be done, shear the sheep or dig the garden or whatever. And occasionally they would go down to the drinking hall and people would say, oh, look, there's, you know, Sven or whatever his name was, that, you know, he's a bit crazy. But actually, you know, they just led a very ordinary life, and they could switch on whatever it was that made them, you know, feared in battle. So immediately I thought, well, you know, the central character of this book is going to be a berserker, or he's going to become a berserker, but he's going to be the good son who really is a bit happier at home, digging the veggie patch and helping mum in the kitchen or whatever. And what an interesting psychological sort of conundrum, you know. And that's where Avon was, you know, born from. A boy whose big brother is a berserker, who wants to be like the big brother, but equally who loves his home patch and is quite peace-loving at heart, and showing how he goes through the trance-like experience that sort of, if you like, bloods him or sort of initiates him as a berserker, and his life from then on, and the influence of a rather disturbed individual who is his friend. Yeah. So it's all, I guess it happens with all the books. They're all about people. They're all about psychology and how people can be strong and courageous, or how and why they are weak, like in going back to Daughter of the Forest, how all those brothers respond individually to being turned into swans. You know, they're not all going to have exactly the same response the way they might in a fairy tale, because in an original fairy tale you tend to get types rather than characters, not individuals, which is why I think often you often just have a name where she'll be the girl or the prince or, you know, the ogre or whoever. I really wanted to put real people into the fairy tale and real people into the Norse saga, and see how they would respond to those extraordinary events. Yeah. So it was good to write. It was a bit of a magnum opus. It's very long. I'm not allowed to write books that long anymore, 220,000 words. Yeah, usually these days the contract says, you know, 130,000 or whatever it is. Those big chunky books that, you know, they're out. Yeah.
But Murakami is allowed to write thick books.
Yeah, I don't think I would write a book that length now. I mean, the one I'm writing at the moment, I said about 130,000 words, which is, you know, slightly more than half as long as Wolfskin. And it's enough to tell a good story. It depends on, I mean, Wolfskin's a really epic story, so is the sequel. This one is less epic in scope, but it's interesting that I've gone back with the current one to a forest setting, though it's not Ireland and Scotland, it's further into Europe, and it's in an imagined land, but it's very like a particular place in Europe. And yes, I wanted to go back to forest. I wanted to go back to the link between humankind and plants and animals, and so I've done that again. But there's also a story of people using power for the wrong reasons, and so it's got moral dilemmas for characters all over the place. I guess I like that, or like writing them.
Mhm. I think in Daughter of the Forest and that series, the people, the main characters, are really respectful to nature, but you can also tell that things are shifting, and nature doesn't remain, and people are not protecting it the way they should. So I'm wondering what you're thinking about the situation we are in now with the climate and so many people still not responding to changes in nature and not properly caring for it.
Yes, well, I'm sure that was foremost in my mind when I decided to write this. I'm writing a duology, so a 2-book series. Yes, absolutely. I thought I wanted to address that theme because it's very important to me, and it's so troubling at the moment that not enough is being done. Particularly, Australia is one of those countries that's not doing very well. And but I didn't want to set it in the present day, so it's like a miniature version, if you like, of the same dilemma, in that someone in a position of power wants something for their own reasons, and in order to reach that thing, whatever, I'm not going to go on about it, except that the word amber is going to come into it. It's necessary to make a way through an ancient forest, and our central character lives in the village that's very close to the border of this ancient forest, and she has a very close bond with nature. She's very good with animals, she's good with plants, she's very caring, but she's not particularly good with her fellow human beings. She's awkward in company, she can't make small talk. She's considered to be a little strange because she lives alone, and she's strong, she works hard, but she just doesn't relate the same way to other people. She doesn't respond in the way people expect. And it becomes that when there's a huge threat to the forest, she has to step out of her comfort zone, which is being alone with her little dog most of the time, and just working hard, and then going back and closing her door to all but one person who's her friend. She's taken out of that comfort zone. She has to act, and that's part of the story. And then there's the epic story that relates to this, search through the ancient forest. So I don't want to give away too much plot, but it's got magic in it, of a particular kind, but it's recognisable as a story about why it's so important to care about nature and preserve nature, and to understand its importance, and to understand that we're just one element in the web of nature. We are not somehow, humankind is not somehow set above it and then able to make these terrible decisions that destroy something that's precious and important and vital to our life. So now I'm, you can tell that I'm a druid now because I'm talking druid philosophy, but I'm hoping that the story will both be entertaining and interesting, that some people will recognise themselves in the central character, because not all of us have that facility with socialising with other people, or being in crowds, or tolerating a whole heap of noise. Some of us are quite happy on our own with nature, or just with one trusted friend. Basically it's all about some people being able to change in order to adapt and grow and understand what's important, and some people who, for one reason or another, and it may be because they've been damaged in some way in their earlier life, are not able to see a huge problem as what it is. They're just obsessed with going on toward their goal. Yeah, so yeah, it's been an interesting one to write. It may well appeal to the same people who love Daughter of the Forest, although it's not that story, but it's because this protagonist is very different. Yeah, I hope people will like it. It's not coming out until 2025, so there's a long wait. I've sort of almost finished writing that one now, and then I have to write book 2 next year, and then we launch. Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I saw that you're writing something again, and I'm also especially happy about your fight to make more people see how important nature is, because also as a musician, sometimes I find it hard to see my value in society, I guess. Sometimes I feel like I should do something more to actually help people, but your story also tells me that you can help people and help society in a different way.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's hard to know sometimes, isn't it, how to act. I think about that. Obviously, I'm a whole lot older than you, and I look back and see times when people knew about climate change so long ago and wrote about it, and somehow action didn't happen, and it's still in some parts of the world not happening, like where I live, basically. People know about it. I'm hoping that there's time for the younger generation to actually step up and step in and make things happen. But there are people of my age who still are, of the belief that, for example, Australia can't, close down its coal and oil business and switch over to renewables completely. They're saying, oh no, we've still got to have gas, we've still got to have coal, and I can't understand that, because there it is staring them in the face. But, big business interests still tend to rule, which is, it's very depressing. And I guess, in my case, I can write stories that refer to it, if somewhat obliquely, but, might reach people with a message, and you can sing and make music and write music, and that's going to reach people as well, because I think folk music in particular is wonderful for, as we were saying before, passing that message across. A lot of the people who love folk music are also nature loving and peace loving. The same people who go out and protest about something that's, unjust, or will protest about felling of forests, or what mining, or, whatever it is. So I think we're both doing really important jobs. Yeah. You have to hold on to hope, because otherwise
Yeah, only
you do.
absolutely. Yeah, I find that sometimes it can be really difficult, and I'm really happy that there are stories that give inspiration and hope, that even a single person can change something for the better. And yeah, that's really something we have to hold on to. Something that really struck me on your blog as well was that you wrote about struggling sometimes with self-confidence and ways to get to help that, because that's something, well, actually, in fact, in some of your stories, the protagonist also does not really believe in themselves, which is the last one that I read. Yeah, I think the follow-up of Wolfskin, then the main character also thinks that she's normal and not very special, and that she can't really make a change, and in the end she does.
Yes, that's right. I'd forgotten that. I was just thinking about it because I was trying to make some notes about music in the books, and remembering her singing and summoning the women from the sea to help, and remember, and I'd forgotten that. Whereas the obvious book is the one that the Warrior Bards is the obvious musical series, and the female character in that is pretty confident. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's good. I mean, I think that a lot of those characters who are perhaps a bit downtrodden, or who just don't have self-confidence, they're definitely reflections of myself in their way. I've never been someone with a great a great deal of self-confidence. So it was quite difficult for me to step into once the books started to become well known, even to do something like this, although, as I say, it's ages since I've even done a Zoom session, but getting up and speaking in front of people, even though I was once a classroom teacher, but I don't know that and also I used to do acting when I was young too. So obviously used to have the self-confidence. But I think it was a case of getting up on the stage or in front of the class and actually delivering what I had to do. And then once I was out the door, sort of, back in the shell again. So possibly the protagonist of the current book is more like me. I mean, I'm not crippled in company the way she is, but I think I did quite like just being on my own quite a lot of the time. And even though I've had so much success with the books and I've been very fortunate with the feedback I've had and how well they've done, I still have a lot of doubt often about whether what I'm doing is really any good. And particularly while writing a book, I'll look back at it and think, because I've just been writing a fight scene, a battle scene, and they are the hardest thing for me to do. I used to have a lovely fellow author who would advise me on battle choreography and how to put it together. And sadly, she passed away a couple of years ago. But scenes in which people hurt each other, scenes in which characters I'm fond of die or are hurt, and also just getting the mechanics of a battle correct. I find that one of the hardest things to do. So I've just spent way too long, I won't tell you how many hours or how many days, just trying to write this one scene and get it right, and finally reached the end of it, and suddenly I found, oh yeah, the words are flowing again. So I've got to go, that's a section that I've written that I have to go back to and check out and get some trusted friends to check it out and see if it works. But, it's still quite hard, even when you're on your 26th book or whatever it is. I keep saying 24 that I've already written, but actually 25, because there is the one that's an audiobook special. So that's called Beautiful. And so that's 25. So this is number 26. So you'd think I wouldn't know what I'm doing like now, but there's still those times of doubt. That's all right. That's me. Maybe it means I understand other people who have times of doubt. Yeah.
In a way, I find that comforting because, I've been always told I should get thicker skin and I should be self-confident, and I'm not. And, people would say, like, how can you put out music if you don't think it's good? But yeah, I do it anyway because I love music. And usually it's somebody else. Yeah, it's somebody else who tells me it's any good, because I never know. So in a way, I'm glad I get to stay that way, because trying to change myself is so painful sometimes. Sometimes I just can't see anything getting better. I keep feeling so much self-doubt.
I think you just, but you love to sing, you love to perform, and you love to make music, don't you? Despite those doubts, and that's the reason to go on doing it. Is that it's, well, you sort of, and also you sort of feel you have to, because that's part of you. It's your means of expressing yourself. And for me, I will go on writing even if I'm not, writing big novels. And with this one, it's being published by a small local publisher, not by the major publishing houses that I've been with before. And I thought about that, and I thought about, do I want to do it? It's not going to earn a lot of money. It may not sell everywhere. It won't sell as many copies as the others, but I want to tell a story. I love doing it, and I love reaching readers and getting that feedback that people have liked it. And I'm sure that sometimes, and hopefully often, when you perform, you get good feedback as well, even though the self-doubt is in the mind, as it is in mine. But you do know that you're doing something that people enjoy, something that's worthwhile.
Yes, and sometimes I also get, like, especially at a moment when I feel bad about things and I feel like I'm not writing something good, then I might get a message from somewhere completely different in the world, maybe Canada, and the person will say, like, oh, I heard your song and I felt so seen, and it really helped me. And that, those things are are also the things that keep you going of
Yes.
actually putting it out.
Mm.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yes. It's
wonderful.
wonderful when it happens.
I have another question, and that's because that's in your earlier books. It felt like always somebody will find somebody they love so much that they're like a soulmate, and
Yes.
And that made me, I guess, in a way, think like that's the way love is supposed to be. But I was really happy to read Mother Thorn last year and find a story in which the protagonist Neve does not actually initially end up with her soulmate, but still creates a really good life. And I was really curious because that's the only one that I know of your books
Yes.
in which that happens.
Yes, it is the only one in which it happens. And that really is ridiculous because in my life that didn't happen. So, or maybe that's why I do it, because it didn't happen. I mean, I married someone and some of that was good. And we had 4 wonderful children together. So, I don't regret it because that's what, my children are fantastic. My grandchildren are wonderful. But not not the sort of true love soulmates thing. And I don't actually believe that is always the way that a couple gets together in real life. So why do I do it? I don't know. Having said that, in the current book, it doesn't take quite that path. So we'll have to see how you feel about that. The current duology, because the story really goes over 2 books. It's not the predictable true love soulmates path. But yes, I think that looking back over my books, I mean, I know there's a readership that likes to have a romantic love story. Boy meets girl. I've done a couple of boy meets boy, but not as the main characters. Yes. So I guess we'll wait and see how they feel. But in retrospect, I wish that I had actually not made every story have that, that traditional love story in it. I wonder how readers would have felt about it. Would have been nice to make some more of the female characters make a decision to stay alone at the end of the book. Yeah, or meet another girl. I never did that, but maybe I saved that up for the future.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I love a romantic story, but I guess in a way it also made me feel like that was the proper way. That's what I needed to be looking for. So I was in fact really pleased to see that that's not, because for me things didn't work out for a long time. Only when I realized that maybe I didn't need to look for that, and I could, there are other ways in which I can be really happy. And yeah, but that's of course a good journey to be on, a path that you have to choose for yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you made that point because it is something that I've thought about, and it's true that if someone like me goes on writing novels in which that particular thing happens, it's possible that readers would think, oh, yes, I've got to wait for the soulmate. And some people will continue to believe in soulmates, and perhaps they'll meet someone who feels like a soulmate, but there's all sorts of different paths that from which a partnership can arise. And it's a mistake to think that there's the one thing that has to happen. Yeah, I think I was dazzled by that romantic ideal when I was young as well. I didn't read much fantasy, but I liked historical novels, and a lot of them were very romantic historical novels, and they had that probably slightly realistic partnership. So yeah, it's a very good point. And I did enjoy writing that particular story in Mother Thorn, in which that true love does not take the path that you would expect, that she leads a very happy life with somebody else, having made the decision, and a bit of a twist in the end. But I loved writing all those stories. That they were really good fun to do. Might try again sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved finding it because it was actually in my library. And many of your older books are not in my library anymore. I really don't understand why sometimes they say like, oh, these books are too old, we'll not have them anymore. That's just insane to me, because books that are good you should always have. And yeah, I don't know what to do about that, but I keep requesting all of your books. But yeah, Mother Thorn was there, and I was like, yes, another one.
Good.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah, that is good. Yes, it's sad
Yeah, and
about
then
old books. The library does sort of take things off the shelves, unfortunately, and perhaps that's because more books keep being published, and perhaps a lot of readers want the latest thing rather than to go back to their old favorites. Yeah, but it's sad. Yeah.
I'm doing a concert series in January where I am going to sing songs and relate them to books that I loved. And your books are always on that list. I did it last year as well. So I hope I'll get a lot more people to reread your books. But yeah, I always want to put the way where they can find them. And yeah, sometimes yours are a bit more hard to find, but you can find them.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. Sounds really, really good. And I hope people can track them down. I mean, most of mine are available in ebook form, somewhere, where perhaps not in print editions anymore, the early ones. And it's a pity about Wolfskin and Foxmask, but they are really big books, and they're probably expensive to print. So yeah. But yeah, available in ebook, or most of them are available in audiobook, quite good audiobooks. So yes, I see a stack of books on the shelf behind you there. I haven't got mine behind me. I've got books by friends, some of mine in the bookcase there, but mostly books by friends, or books that I have yet to read. I have a huge to be read pile at the moment. So, and when I'm writing a book, as at moment, I tend only to read. I read short or rather lightweight books, just so that they don't sort of get in the way of what I'm doing creatively. So I love Regency romance or Regency mysteries, and also some crime fiction. But I try not to get too sort of stuck on very long lists of the 14 books in the series kind of thing, because that I have to spend a certain number of hours a day writing, or I won't get this done. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Your books sometimes make me not work at all day, because I'll just keep reading. And every time I think like, no. So we have to do something now. Then the book is there. Yeah. So I try to doze, but and also I reread them. Yeah, and I give them to my sisters to read, and then ask them back, or other friends.
Yes, I have.
No,
I have books that I reread too. I have sort of classic favourites on a particular bookshelf, and I'll get them out and reread from time to time. Yes.
Which are your favorites to reread? Can you name a few?
I love Dorothy L. Sayers, her Lord Peter Wimsey and Harriet Vane novels, and I have all of those, and I reread those. So I've reread them a lot of times, but they're so different from what I write that it's quite good to to read them in between writing books. And I have some childhood favourites as well, which are a bit obscure, but oh gosh, my childhood favourites tended to be books about children at English boarding schools, and I'm old, it shows. But I also love
I love those too.
okay, yeah. I love the Moomins series by Tove Jansson. The Moomins,
yeah.
Yeah, an absolute favourite with me. And
yeah, and I found them by accident, because
yeah. Go on.
we have a thing called King's Day, and then people sell out all their old crap. And that's how I found a big stack of Moomin books, and I had never heard of them.
Wow.
And they cost 20 cents a book, and I bought 5, and I so regret I didn't buy them all.
Oh, yes, you should have bought them all.
Yeah, and all of Tove Jansson's book, also I did not know. And yeah, I wonder where they ended up. But yeah, that and the really old ones, yeah, it's just beautiful. For my son, I've got the bigger comic ones as well.
Yeah, yes.
So we can look at the images, because those older ones.
I've passed my Moomin collection on to one of my grandsons now. He's just about getting to the age when he wouldn't be able to read them, but he could have them read to him. But I sort of miss them. I'm thinking maybe I might get a set for myself as well, as they're available in paperback now. And I actually visited Finland earlier this year, I went on a tour to see the Savonlinna opera, and was really interested in Finland to see such a huge sort of Moomin culture. There's sort of Moomin toys and books for sale and so forth. And oh, what a beautiful country. I mean, that was partly research for this book, because we also got to walk in the forest, see some of the tallest trees in the world, and the beautiful waterways that people live on islands and go by boat to and fro, and also finding out that fascinating details like when the lake freezes over in winter and you have to go to and from where you live on the island. People drive on the ice in their car, but you have to listen for the ice forecast to make sure it's actually going to be safe, that it's actually thick enough to get across to your destination and back, which is terrifying. And you drive with your seatbelt off and the car windows open, so that if it goes in, and you can escape, which I found absolutely terrifying. But that's it. That's the present day and age, living in that kind of climate. Yeah, it was a wonderful trip. I'd love to go back. I don't know if I ever will, but it
Wow.
was just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also beautiful how a whole country embraces characters that are so awkward, I guess.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that's what I love about Moomins.
Yeah. Well, that's what when I said
Not your
about
prototypical
yeah.
character.
No, psychology of humans fascinates me. And I think one of the things I love about the Moomin books is that you can see the psychology of the individuals, even though it's a little Moomin, and you've got Snufkin with his hat and his pipe, but they are real characters, and you understand how they feel, and uh, what is particularly Moomin Troll. I think I relate to Moomin Troll because he's so emotionally insecure and depends very much on other people saying the right things and doing the right things. And we're back to the character who's a little bit awkward with others, but quite emotionally needy. And that fascinated me, because it's on the face of it, it's a book for small children, but it's full of all sorts of possible wisdom and learning for us as well, like all her work. So, yeah, really exceptional.
Yeah, one of the stories that really stood out to me was, I don't remember who the main character is, but they're afraid of everything. And I am afraid of everything. But at some point, the whole house blows away and she's left with nothing.
Yes.
And that's when she's released, because there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. And
Yes, I do remember that. Yes, I can't remember her name either, but I do remember the story. Yeah, the whole everything goes, and then suddenly, freedom rather than complete terror, which is, really, really good. Yeah. That's
yes,
story
yeah,
magic.
that's the
for
story
you,
I read.
really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just gonna grab a drink.
I'm gonna look at Jack and see. Are we gonna talk until 1? Oh no, but that will be 7 for Juliet.
Well, yeah. If you have any more questions, I mean,
Well, there's one about magic, because you talked about magic and the uncanny, the things that are not. Well, I guess I'm wondering if you believe in magic.
Yeah, interesting question. I do, but not quite in the sense of a sort of a Harry Potter kind of magic where you flick your wand and do something, make something change. But authors do magic in all different ways in their stories. I think for me, because I belong to a druid order now and have done for quite a few years, it's more for me the magic of nature, and what you believe in can be different, slightly different for everybody. I guess for me, it's hard to put a finger on it. When I was in Ireland, and I was in Ireland as well during the year on a separate trip, I loved walking through the landscape, which is very different from Australia, and the trees and nature and the wildflower meadows, and a lot of walking on my own. I was at a writer's retreat and I was with other people, but the most important thing to me was walking out in that beautiful nature. And a lot of really strange things happened there. You know, were they magic or were they just synchronicity, or was it all in my mind? I don't know. But finding, for example, that there was a particular pathway between the trees that I wanted to go down just to see what's down there, light and shade, and it was right under the trees, and getting a really strong sensation that no, I wasn't to go there. Where it came from, I don't know. There were at that stage no creatures around it. I mean, there were birds and so forth, but just no, don't go. And so I didn't go. I went on a separate walk. I didn't go down that. I came back to the same place on another day, and on that day in exactly the same spot, I was standing looking down under the trees, and this huge cloud of very tiny butterflies that were kind of iridescent blue and purple came flying in front of me and across the gap between the trees. And I saw that as meaning it's okay to go in now, go and look. I went down under the trees, and you know, it was just a very quiet, beautiful, quiet place surrounded by trees, a sort of a place of peace. And I sat on a log and stayed there for a while, and I guess meditated in an informal sort of way, and came away from the place feeling really refreshed and renewed, and, you know, as if something had changed in me. And that felt to me like magic. It wasn't, you know, overt magic. It was nature magic and healing magic, and it belonged to that particular place. And later on, when I spoke to other people, not on the same trip, but just other people who were familiar with that setting, said that they had felt the same, that in particular spots where something had happened for them emotionally or in their mind, that suggested, you know, some force beyond what was explicable, I guess. Yeah, that's happened to me several times there in that Irish countryside. It was the same when I went back this time. This time it was more not one specific thing, but passing by certain trees and feeling that the trees had a presence and an individuality. I think I've posted some. I don't know if I posted the pictures on my blog, but if not, I will. There are some ancient yew trees there that are very magical. They date back to the time of Henry VIII, so they're really, really old, male and female yew trees that sort of entwine their branches across the path. And so we visited that place, and that's a place with a lot of magic. You just feel it. Stand there and touch the trees, and you can feel it. But also because it was almost winter. When I was there this time, there were trees that had lost their leaves but had ivy twining up the trunks, and the branches were like arms stretching out and more arms stretching out, and they all seemed to be in groups, and it was like they were either dancing together or telling a story together. And I felt that so strongly in that place. So, you know, on the one hand, you're going to have people that just say, yeah, oh yes, Juliet, she's kind of weird and wacky and she's a druid and all that sort of stuff. And on the other side, there would be people who were there with me, not at that time, but walking around at other times, who came back and said, wow, I felt such a strong presence in such and such a place. Some people found a presence that actually was telling them to leave, which is interesting, whereas some of us felt something that was strongly encouraging, that was saying, hey, listen, you know, we've been here a long time, tree, listen to my story, you know. And so I would stay under the tree and listen and take away whatever wisdom, you know, came to me. So that's the kind of magic that I believe in, and that is really the kind of magic that I'm building into this story, although there's something that will come across to people as more overt magic. Oh, I know. And there's one more, if I've got time to tell something else, yes, which gave birth to the very first scene in this story. I live in Australia, Western Australia. On the fringe of a city, there are some wonderful big old trees here. They're old huge eucalypts that were planted, you know, a long, long time ago. And we have a lot of birds in the neighbourhood, including a lot of magpies. And I walk my dogs around the neighbourhood, and sometimes I go walking without the dogs. And there happened to be one occasion when I was out walking quite early for some reason without the dogs, and saw magpies on the road, sort of clustered together. What are they looking at? Walked along next to a picket fence outside someone's house, and there was a magpie hanging from the picket fence by its neck. And I thought, oh, this was a really strange thing. Caught by the neck, hanging down, completely still. I thought it was dead. And they were all looking, and they were looking at me, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to try to move it. The magpies, they peck hard and they're quite large, and I just don't trust myself to get things right, but there was no choice. So I moved in and put my hands underneath it and just lifted it up so that its neck came out from between where it was held, but, a fence with one of those things at the top, edged it out, felt it moving as soon as I touched it and realised it was alive. And I didn't even have to lift it down onto the ground. I lifted it up and it flew out of my arms or my hands and down to the ground. And then they all flew away together, the one that was on the fence and all the others. So I don't know how it fell in there, but that was profound. And the even more profound thing is that from every time I've walked past that general area since then, the magpies have come down as if to say, we know who you are, we've recognised what you did. And I have magpies that come into my back garden as well and come and peck on the grass and so forth. And I feel like they're saying thank you. So once you read the new novel, that's something that happens to my character. She's not me, but that was so special. I thought, right, and I knew I was writing about a character who had a bond with animals. So that's where we start the story. So that was magic, I thought. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, so you are somebody who trusts their intuition generally, I guess.
Tries to, sorry? Say that again?
You trust your intuition, like when you're in a place and you feel something.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I suppose you could call it that. I mean, I'm wary sometimes. I'm wary because I'm wary of my own ability. I doubt my own ability to do things sometimes. But the intuition, yes, it tells me what to do. I guess it guides me in the right direction quite often, and that can be valuable.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that because, like I said earlier, I'm somebody who's often quite anxious for things. So, and sometimes people say, like, if you feel anxiousness, don't do it. But if I did that, I would never do anything, so
Yeah.
I sometimes I try not to, but maybe it's a different thing. I'm not sure, but yeah, but I do understand what you say about trees and places in nature. I feel that too, like stories that happen and places where you feel like I should sit down here and listen and come away with something.
Yes, well, I tend to think, trees.
But I'm never scared.
Trees are so old. They've been there for such a long time. They've seen so much that I feel as if they must be wise. And so even if you just sit there next to the tree, I think you probably gain something. Even if what you gain is physical peace and slowing down and time to think, that's valuable too. So yeah.
Wonderful. I think an hour of talking is a lot, right?
It's a lot, but it's been good. You asked me some very interesting questions and pointed me in some interesting directions, and I'm hoping that I will be able to hear the music that you compose that might arise from talking to me or from reading my work.
Of course. I think I'm bound by contract. So
Are you feeling inspired then, Sophie?
Absolutely, of course. But everything.
So many different directions to go for the song. What do you think? What first brings to mind?
Well, the thing we talked about last is now the first thing in my mind. The calm and peace coming from being in nature and feeling everything. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things we can write about.
It's a lot easier to write a 3-minute song than a magnus opus.
I hope so. At least it won't take as long.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks, everyone. It's been a wonderful listening to you speak and share.
And thank you, Jack. It's been really good, and I appreciate being asked to be part of this. What a really interesting show.
Well, thanks, Juliet. Thanks. Really appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of your fans will benefit
I'm
as well,
just
hearing you speak and hearing your insights and getting a new insights into your work.
I'll be so embarrassed to hear my own voice. But, you know, I'm glad you talk more than I did, right?
I'll no doubt be embarrassed to hear myself, you know, blathering on about this and that. But there you go. It was a good discussion, I think. Yeah.
We'll have to deal with that. Thanks. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, you're very welcome.
All right, let's get started on a song.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So do I sign out here? Yes.
Yeah, let's sign off and we'll send you the song as soon as it's ready. How was that, Sophie? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was just, for me, it was incredible because she's been part of my life for so long. Like I was 14 and I'm 37, 38 now. So that's 24 years.
Wow.
That's insane.
Yeah.
24 years. And I've reread those books so many times. I'm really glad she said that about love, you know, not maybe always taking that form, you know? Because, yeah, I had to really decide like, okay, so I'm not going to look for my soulmate anymore because this makes no sense. And I'll just find somebody who I feel home with and, you know,
Right.
trust and all
Wow.
of that. And, but that was something I had to learn for myself. So I was really happy to see that in that one of her later books, like that it just came out last year. And I thought, oh, look, okay, so that's not the way she thinks it's supposed to be. Because I felt from all of those books that she had that kind of love. And it was so interesting to hear that, in fact, she wrote those kinds of things because she was looking for that. Like, actually, because she missed that.
Yeah, wish fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also inspiring to me because I think I wrote those things as well. Like sometimes when you write a song, it's based on your life, but also on the way you want it to go into, or it could have gone into. And yeah, that hopefulness. I think I've got some songs that way as well. Yeah, that a really inspiring thing as well.
Yeah,
I had
no
no idea
worries.
she was a druid, by the way.
Yeah, that was a big insight too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so funny.
Well, she's
Okay.
pulling on a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
well, let's go back and forth on the song, and I can't wait to hear what you come up with.
all right, and I hope your whole family gets better soon. And
Yeah, thank you very much.
you too.